Hello, welcome to Algoma Family Services Community Kitchen at Home Edition. I'm Sherry Beaton. Welcome to my kitchen. Today's episode is all about baked beans. What do you think of when you think of baked beans? Do you think of opening up a can of pork and beans? Do you think of a favorite family recipe that you particularly enjoyed and maybe haven't tried yet to do yourself? Or do you think of that childhood jingle, beans, beans, the magical fruit? Well, today we're going to break it down. We'll be preparing baked beans right from the dried bean state. We'll be preparing two recipes which are interchangeable with the two cooking methods that we'll also be using. We'll be using a white pea bean, but you can use Great Northern beans, navy beans, whatever your preference is. Dried beans are a very economical way to add some variety to your menu planning and also to add protein and fiber. Before we get started, please take 20 seconds to wash your hands with soap and warm water. When we get back, we'll start with preparing the dried beans. Preparing beans from the dried bean state does require some time, so you will have to plan ahead. Soaking the beans usually is done overnight, or you could just soak them for approximately 8 hours. You don't need any special kitchen equipment other than your oven and your range top. You don't need any really special ingredients. The ingredients are typically things that you would have in your pantry. Also, the ingredients in these recipes are easily interchangeable. You can make the recipes your own, personalize them with the flavor profiles that you prefer in your family. The first step in making any homemade baked bean recipe is soaking the beans overnight. Measure the beans according to the recipe you're going to use. Put them in a large pot, cover with a good amount of cold water, cover them, and set them to soak overnight. We will be preparing two recipes that require 2 cups of dried beans for each recipe. So we will be boiling 4 cups of dried beans. Once the beans have soaked overnight, drain the soaking water and pick out any substandard or discolored beans. You'll notice that now the beans are quite a bit plumper than they were when you put them on to soak. The next step in preparing the baked beans is to boil the beans. You need to boil the beans in this step until they're as soft as you're going to want them in your recipe. Once you've mixed them with the other ingredients and put them on to bake, they will not get any softer. Cover the beans with cold water and set your burner to a medium heat and bring it to a low boil. When the pot reaches a low boil, turn the heat down to medium-low and keep it at a simmer. Check the pot periodically and remove any foam that collects at the top. Beans will need to simmer for anywhere from 1 to 2 hours. It will depend on the type of bean you have selected and the degree of softness that you prefer. Check the pot periodically and add hot water as needed to make sure that the beans are always covered. Start checking for doneness around the 1 hour and 15-minute mark. When the beans have reached the degree of tenderness or softness that you prefer for your recipe, turn off the heat. Carefully drain the beans and reserve some of the cooking liquid for using in your recipe later on. Reserving the cooking liquid is optional. You can use fresh water later on in the recipe. However, using the reserved liquid adds flavor and nutrient value. Now your dried beans are cooked and ready to use in whatever baked bean recipe you prefer. At this point, they will be soft in texture and some of them may be even splitting, and that's absolutely fine. For this recipe, you will need an oven-proof pot or dish that will accommodate at least 2.5 liters. It can even be the pot that you boiled the beans in, as long as it's oven-proof. The 2 cups of dried beans that you have soaked and boiled have yielded approximately 5.5 cups of cooked beans. Now it's time to prepare and add the final ingredients to your recipe. Dice 1 cooking onion and 1/2 pound of bacon. Add the diced onion and bacon to the dish with the cooked beans. Measure the remainder of the ingredients in the recipe. 2 teaspoons of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of ground black pepper, 1/4 teaspoon of ground dry mustard, 1 tablespoon Worcestershire sauce, 3 tablespoons of fancy molasses. Be sure that you're using fancy molasses and not blackstrap molasses. 1/4 cup of brown sugar and 1/2 cup of ketchup. Mix all of the sauce ingredients in a small saucepan over medium heat and bring it just to the boil. Pour the sauce over the beans, onions, and bacon and stir to mix well. Pour some of the reserved cooking liquid over the beans, just enough to cover them. Cover the baking dish with a lid or aluminum foil. Put the beans in the preheated oven and bake for 3 to 4 hours. Check the beans occasionally, and if they are looking dry, add a little water or reserved cooking liquid. This is the Boston baked bean recipe after it's been baking in the oven at 325 degrees for 2 hours. As I pulled it out of the oven, it was still bubbling. There was quite a bit of liquid, so I'm going to put it back in the oven for another hour, and we'll check it after the 3 hours cooking time. Here are the Boston baked beans that were baked in the oven for 3 hours. They smell delicious and they taste delicious as well. For the next homemade baked bean recipe, we will be using a different cooking method and a different combination of ingredients for the sauce. This recipe is for maple baked beans, and we will cook the recipe using the slow cooker method. This recipe for maple baked beans starts with 1 pound or 2 cups of dried beans that you have soaked and boiled. You'll also need 1 diced onion, 1/2 pound of diced bacon, approximately 3/4 cup of chili sauce, approximately 3/4 cup of maple syrup, 2 teaspoons of salt, and approximately 1 to 1.5 teaspoons of ground mustard. Put the cooked beans into the slow cooker and put the diced onions and diced bacon on top of the cooked beans. Combine the sauce ingredients in a small saucepan and heat on medium heat, bringing just to the boil. This step isn't really necessary in either of the recipes, but it does pull the sauce together very nicely. Pour the sauce over the beans, bacon, and onions and stir to combine, stirring carefully so that you don't damage the beans. Put enough of the reserved cooking liquid from boiling the beans or clear water on top of the beans just to cover. Turn the slow cooker onto high and cook on high for approximately 1 hour. After 1 hour, turn the slow cooker to low and cook on low for approximately 6 to 7 hours. Check the beans periodically, give them a stir, and add more liquid if they're starting to look dry. The maple baked beans have been cooking in the slow cooker for approximately 7 hours. Every slow cooker is different, so your slow cooker will determine how long you use the high setting and how long you use the low setting. With this particular slow cooker, I had to use the high setting for a longer period of time. You'll notice that immediately when you turn off the slow cooker, the beans cooked in the slow cooker look very juicy, a lot of sauce. They will thicken up as they cool. Another way to thicken them up is take a cup or 2 out, mash them up, and stir it back in to the beans. They smell delicious and they taste delicious too. I'm just sampling the maple baked beans that were cooked in the slow cooker. They're delicious. And this is a family favorite in our home and was often even eaten for breakfast with toast. I hope you've enjoyed following along today, and I hope that we've taken some of the mystery out of how to prepare baked beans from scratch, right from the dried bean state. I encourage you to try these recipes. Try the 2 different cooking methods. You will have seen throughout the episode that the end result is a little bit different with each cooking method. The slow cooker method is has a little bit more sauce to it. And I encourage you to experiment with ingredients. ingredients that you know your family prefers. And here are just a few examples of other ingredients that you may want to try, some different flavor profiles for using in your baked beans. Pickled jalapenos, barbecue sauce, maybe a couple of teaspoons of apple cider vinegar. A good combination is chili sauce and maple syrup. You may want to substitute prepared mustard for the ground mustard. If you're doing a vegetarian option, you might want to add some diced tomatoes and some other vegetables. And maybe with the pickled jalapenos, some salsa might be a nice addition. So the sky's the limit. Really, it's your taste preferences that will dictate how you prepare your baked beans. Thanks for joining me. Until next time, enjoy cooking. Bye for now.